So we're here at the Devday.lk conference, the first international software conference in Sri Lanka. I'm Johannes Broadwell, and with me today I've got Venkat Subramaniam, who's the keynote speaker at today's conference. So Venkat, what was the topic of your keynote today?
Well, first of all, I want to say a couple of things that really excite me. One, you actually could say my name, which is really a pleasure to see that. Not many people can actually say the name really fluently. So it's wonderful to be here at this conference. It's a fantastic conference, well-run, and one of the signs of a well-run conference is everything just works. And enormous amount of effort has been put behind the scenes. So kudos to the team for getting this well-run conference. I spoke really about, my morning keynote was about demystifying some of the myths in our industry and how we generally as software people are fearful to make change, and we should really push the boundaries, question the status quo, go try out different things, and just to be open-minded. And that's essentially the overall theme about this.
So how do you become open-minded?
By not being close-minded. Well, and one of the ways to be open-minded is really to encourage each other to go try new things and to say, hey, here's things that worked in the past, but let's go ahead and try different things. We have this fear of trying something new. We get into this comfort zone. And in fact, I was tweeting this the other day. There's a difference between experience and comfortable. And a lot of times we confuse being comfortable with being experienced. And the real experience actually comes from doing different things and stepping out of the comfort zone, wherein a lot of us over time become comfortable doing things, and we're really good at what we do, and we really suck at doing something different. So, and true experience really, requires breaking the barrier.
So what you're saying is that when you are experienced and when you're good at something, it becomes maybe even harder to try something new because you're used to succeeding with what you do.
We are our worst enemy. With the really good of us become the really hard part to really break. Well, one of the reasons, there's a good reason for this, right? Because when we are young, as in when we are in school and go to college, we don't know a lot of stuff, and then we learn. We are thirsty to learn. We have nothing to lose. And so once we get to that point, we have gained our experience, we have worked our way through, now we have gotten a certain amount of status. And the mere thought of letting that go and starting over from the ground up is very disturbing. And that's one of the reasons why we will cling on to what we are really good at.
So there was a different element to your talk than what I've seen before. You pulled someone up on stage to be your co-speaker.
So I tend to do that during some keynotes where I believe in pairing up, I believe in interaction, and rather than me being on the stage alone, I like to find a victim to be part of the stage as well. But most of the time people do extremely well. I surprise somebody by pulling them. They have no clue what they're getting into. But I think Praveen today managed really well, so it was fun to have him as well on the stage.
I thought so as well. Is this your first time in Sri Lanka?
It is the first time, and I'm definitely thrilled to be here. I had no expectations coming in here, and every minute I've spent here I've been glad I'm here. It's beautiful, it's green, it's fantastic, and I think the rest of the world has something to learn from here, in my opinion, honestly.
Do you mean about the country or about the conference?
Both, and certainly the country as well, being the first time in the country.
All right, so you're hoping to come back then?
I hope so, yes.
So, this conference, one of the major topics here is about agility. And it's been 12 years since the Agile Manifesto was written. In another 12 years, will we still talk about Agile?
Well, so do we talk about object-oriented programming today?
Yeah, sure.
And we do. And in a way, if I, and I'm sure you will relate to this as much as I will, if you look back in time, there was this wonderful time when we had people fighting. And they were talking about how object-oriented programming would suck. It wouldn't work. Nobody in the right mind would use it in the enterprise. And then all of a sudden things kind of quieted down. And then nobody debates about whether OO is the right thing to do. In fact, I think to a great extent we are trying to put people out of OO, the bandwagon, and say, maybe you should consider functional programming.
Right.
And I'm hoping Agile will be exactly there in 12 years. Now people are getting onto the bandwagon of Agile, and maybe in 12 years we'll try to get them off of it because we would have learned about something better, maybe a better way to solve problems, better way to really develop software. And Agile is a better way, but I'm not going to say it is the way or it is the right way. And I think it's really silly for us to even consider that we have figured out how to do software. It's a very nascent field compared to a lot of other things we've done as humans, right? Buildings, construction, medicine, and various other things in human aspect. We've been developing software for a very short amount of time. Like that's the time we've spent probably compared to all the time we have spent developing other things. And it's premature to say that we know how to do stuff. And I think we are largely ignorant, and in fact we are ignorant about being ignorant, I think.
Yes.
And I think over the next 12 years I hope we'll get a little bit more mature, and then we can learn from the experience we have.
So in your talk you pulled out some statistics, so talking about knowing how good we are or not. So you pulled out some statistics about the failure rate of projects. Could you go into that?
Sure. There are some really good authors over the time. For example, Cephas Jones made his name studying failed software projects. There's a fantastic book by Lorman where he talks about various project studies. And in general, and I really wish I had known this when I was young, is if a project has never gone through a release in 3-year period, its success rate is close to 0%. And I've actually been through projects myself knowing that. And so frequent release and frequent feedback cycle is extremely important. And one of the key things is, it's one of the worst things about getting feedback is not doing anything about it. And I see this quite often is we put it into this autopilot and say, oh, we need the feedback, but the question is, it's not just getting the feedback, but doing something about it.
Right. Yeah. So could you give some examples of how that would work?
Of not getting the feedback?
Yeah, I mean, some
absolutely. I had a client come up to me and said, hey, we were doing iterative and agile development and it didn't work for us. And I said, well, okay, so how did you guys do it? Well, we took sprints every month, we developed software, sent it to our customers. I said, that's great. And what did your customers do? And he thought for a second and he said, well, they said thank you. I said, well, very good, well-mannered customers. And then what did you guys do when you got the thank you? Well, we went on to build the next cycle of iteration. And then when we got it done about 18 months later, they kicked and screamed, didn't like it. And I said, well, the problem is you guys were practicing the cycle, but there was no listening going on, there was no feedback going on. And a lot of times, I was talking to somebody today and he asked, well, would we do agile in manufacturing? Would it make sense to do it? And my first question is, what is agile development? And to me, agile development is feedback-driven development. And if agile is about feedback, tell me in which area of life we don't want feedback. And I had somebody who is not a programmer, who doesn't do any software development, and I paired up with him to go through an agile development course where we filled in different roles. And one of the things he said about 2 years later is, he said he had no clue getting into working with me on this, and now in almost every aspect of life he's being agile. He works with his staff very differently. He no longer gives them things to do and come back after 3 months. He has them go through every couple of weeks of development and say, come back and tell us how things went, what have you done, and where do you want to go? In a way, think about this as steering a car. You could put it on a cruise control, that's fine, but you constantly have to steer the car to keep it on road. Yeah. And to get a sense of how we are, how is the automobile behaving on the road, what is the weather condition around us, and as human beings, this is what we do constantly, but rather involuntarily, we respond to events around us, and we thrive on the feedback. And when it comes to doing work, it is to be sensitive to that. That's kind of where we have a disconnect. And agile development is really about this feedback, I think. It's very critical to have that.
I think that's a very profound statement. Now, this is about how to get, what we've talked about now is how to get feedback in your organization, in your team, in the way that you're doing stuff. So this is I feel mostly at a team level and organizational level. So the first time I got to know you was when I was reviewing your first book, I think, Practices of an Agile Developer. So coming to the developer, what are the most important things for the developer as an individual, as a skilled professional to learn?
Well, I think there are several as individuals for us to learn, but one thing that bothers me to a great extent is in our industry, we tend to have this complete disconnect between, oh, this is what management wants us to do, and this is what we should be doing as programmers. And oftentimes when, I used to go around thinking that programmers got it and the management didn't get it. And over the past few years, I've been proven wrong several times over.
In which of those?
In both of those. and to a great extent, I would argue, when developers come to me and tell me, you know what, we get this, but we're not able to convince the management. And the first question I ask the developers these days is, do you really get it? Are you convinced? And most of the time, the answer is, they aren't convinced. And yet it's so easy for us to say that the management is not convinced. And so one of the things I ask the developers is, do you know everything? And a good developer says, no, I don't. Are you the smartest person in the world? No. Well, then why do you expect your management to know everything and they are the smartest people in the world? They are humans as much as we are, even though it's hard to believe sometimes, right? They are humans. They are in here like everybody else is. And they are working hard. They are making mistakes, but they have the genuine interest. So one of the first things I would ask developers to do is get out of this mindset that you have to do what you're being told. Yeah. Get into a conversational mode. Try to bring out good reasons why you have to do certain things a certain way, and try to enter into a conversation and buy in your management into it. And the second thing I would say is, it is impossible to be agile on a project without having technical competency. And a lot of times when projects are trying to be agile through whatever mechanism it is, Scrum or whatever the management practice is, when we don't have the technical underpinning, we cannot sustain it. And unfortunately, this requires a lot of discipline and hard work. And I would ask developers, do you really have the discipline and the hard work? If you are convinced very thoroughly this is the right way to do, you're not going to say, I couldn't convince the management. You're going to find a way to convince them. So I would say, first, build your commitment, build your discipline, and then go around convincing the rest of the organization around you. Then I think we have a chance for success. If I'm not convinced, I cannot go around and say others are not convinced, because that, I think, is hypocrisy. I am not convinced myself. That's the problem. That's where I need to fix, first of all, I think.
So the change starts
within.
Itself.
Absolutely. In a way, it is spiritual. In a way, the change starts within.
Right.
But it is true.
And I think it's also the theme of this conference to a great extent.
Absolutely.
So now for the second part of the interview, we're going to do the lightning round. So in the lightning round, I'll ask you a set of questions, and then you should answer as quickly as possible. And when you've answered, you should ring the bell.
Okay.
So let's try the bell. Good. All right. So what's the best programming language?
The one that works for me.
Which is best, Scrum or Kanban?
One works for me. It's context-based.
Do I need to write tests?
It's your problem, not mine. Will I write the test? I believe so.
That's good. Is JavaScript going to take over the world?
Already done. Oops, even the bell.
And the final one that I got from my colleague Mahesh: how do I become a better software professional?
Get feedback from others.
Venkat, thank you very much for
Pleasure, thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.